start with the basic things which I have to share about the subject. And as far as my experience goes, I believe many of you will be from non-humanities background. Fine. So how many of you are from humanities background? Big number here. Good. Fine. So those students who are not from humanities background, don't feel there is any disadvantage. Fine. Because I will start from the basic, so you will not have any disadvantage. But more than that, what I want to make it a point, why I am making this point, because in the previous batches I realized that the way you have been studying science subjects, it makes a big difference when you enter into the humanities. Fine. In humanities, the knowledge is very subjective. Fine. One idea different people may explain differently. Like science, there is no 2 plus 2 equals to 4. Fine. It can be 6, it can be 3, it all depends upon how you present it. So there is no ideal way of writing answer, that there is a way, there are some expectations from the answers, but don't take the subject very literally. Fine. It's not that there is only one meaning of something, there can be different meanings, there can be different interpretations. This will come to you gradually, not from the very first day, and maybe the first week you may find little bit troublesome, in the sense you will be entering into something very different type of a universe of learning than it used to be. But I feel that I am sure that after a week you all will become very comfortable with the subject and you will start enjoying the subject. So for 1 week, have that patience with you and try to, actually you will have to make some change in the way you have been studying. And here the only thing is, you are not familiar with the social science and the way of studies. Social science is not a rocket science, not a big deal. So there will be no such concerns, but be open, relaxed and patient. Now, few things I would like to share, that what type of subject political science is. Science. So though there is a word science here, fine, but there is nothing scientific in the subject. Fine. This is also a politics, that the word science has been added. Fine. थोड़ा सा वॉल्यूम कम करो, वो कर रहा है. So there is one scholar who says, regarding the use of this term political science for the title of the subject, he says that when I look at the question paper with the title political science, I am more troubled with the title than the questions. Okay? Why? Because there cannot be any science in politics. Fine? There can only be you can say there cannot be science. Politics is an art. Fine? There cannot be any arithmetics. Arithmetics is the worst thing that can be in politics. As what Modi ji said, arithmetic didn't work chemistry worked. Fine. So Mahagathbandhan, arithmetic, that didn't work. So actually even chemistry has no role, and he is also a politician, so he is saying so, that there is some role. So don't think there is some chemistry because there is some science. There is no science in political science. Political science is an art, politics is a craft. Fine. And politics is known as statecraft, art of running the government, art of governance. Just like philosophy is soul craft, art of living. Political science, politics is statecraft. Fine. How to come to power, how to remain in power, how to manage the government. Fine. So there will be some transition in the way you have been studying political science. Now we will be requiring political science at the level of mains examination, and in mains examination what is important is how you write your answers. Fine. Ultimately everybody must be telling you, learn how to write good answer. But what is my suggestion is, you will not know how to learn how to write a good answer without having a sufficient information and understanding. The nature of questions which UPSC will ask, different topics will be clubbed together. Fine. In our subject, political theory and international relations can be linked. Indian politics can be linked. So we cannot write answer until unless a comprehensive picture of the all topics is in front of us. So right now we should have the goals, a plan of action. So right now at present, and I will say for the next 1 month also, the plan of action should not be just going for answer writing 5 answers, that is not needed also. Fine. Plan of action should be understanding the subject. My way of teaching is, I emphasize lot on that you logically understand the things. You need not to mug up the things. There may be certain myths that in social sciences we have to mug up. No, it's not like that. Social sciences and political science in particular is a very logical subject. Thinkers, what thinkers have said, you have to understand why. What is the relevance in present time? So when you come to the class, the objective should be understanding the basics and the concepts. Application of mind is the most important thing. I never tell students to run after books, no point. See, it's a conceptual subject. If a theory and the idea you can understand by simple the discussion which we will have, there is no need of any book. Either you will understand from one book, otherwise n number of books, no point. Understanding comes when we apply our mind. So we need more of a mental exercise. No amount of reading can be helpful if you are not an active learner and if you are not critically analyzing things while you are doing things. The very methodology of the subject, I will start with Socrates. Socrates has started dialectics. Dialectics is a methodology of the subject. What is dialectics? That also we will explain. But in simple sense, dialectics means there is a debate, there is an argument, there can be a counter argument, and then you reach to some conclusion. Fine. So political science is studied as an active debate. What is there in political science syllabus? Different theories, different ideologies, and there is a debate among these different ideologies. What is there in the real politics? You have rightist, leftists, you have feminist, you have environmentalist. Any policy come, there is a debate on that. So active, what is real politics? So is the theory. So what exactly are we going to study? We have to understand Indian politics, we have to understand international politics, and we have to understand these things theoretically, these things conceptually. Fine. And just like there are different ideologies or political parties having different ideological grounds, ideological basis, so there are different schools of thought in the theory also. Fine. So basically political science is understanding different ideologies. Socialism, who is a liberal, who is conservative, who is fascist, who is feminist, who is Gandhian, what is their plan, what is their program. Is that clear? So this particular subject, now what are the challenges in the subject? First of all, I will say there is no such challenge in the subject. There are a lot of myths that have been created. The syllabus is very lengthy and all, and it's very dynamic. So what I will say, that one should know how to study. Fine. Political science syllabus, there is a lot of overlapping things. Fine. You will see non-alignment is mentioned in three places. Globalization as a topic mentioned in 3 places. I must understand and have an ability to integrate the things. Fine. And what you require? You require smartness, a smart preparation. See, knowledge is infinite. No one can ever claim that I know everything about even a single subject. Fine. And here our objective is not to do PhD in the subject. Fine. Politics is something very interesting. Political science as a subject is also extremely interesting. And what happens, sometimes a student get too much involved in the subject, and there emerge 3 categories of students. First, students who feel as if they have to become philosopher or a scholar. Fine. So that is not our objective. Second, the worst situation, they turn up becoming activists. They feel now they have to do something for the country, and now they link it so much with their real life. So here, neither you are here to become an activist nor to do PhD in the subject. Your only task is how to get the maximum possible marks in the mains examination. Fine. And hence I always encourage questions, because question and answer is the way in which political science is studied. But at the same time, try to restrict yourself and discipline yourself. When you ask question, think whether my question has some relevance for the exam. Otherwise, endless debates continue. We have a Facebook, we can talk on that. Is that clear? So be very professional. Otherwise, like it's a 5-year syllabus which we have to cover in 4-5 months. Along with that, you understand, you have your complete notes. So we have to follow certain disciplines to be able to do that. We cannot have a freedom of discussion of the things like we do in university classes, because this purpose is not here. Now, what is relevant or not? How to know it? The best way is understand the syllabus. What is the syllabus? And look at the previous year questions. The objective of a learning of any topic is, when I look at previous year questions, I should be comfortable to answer those questions. Don't go for quality of answer at this point of time. That, okay, when I look at the question, I should not get frightened, I am okay and I am in a comfort zone that logically I will be able to handle this. Fine. So, look at the previous year questions. I don't recommend any books. The only thing I recommend is you can take previous year question paper. Any publication is fine. You can take Vishal publication and look for the questions from 2008 onwards. Okay, don't go back because the syllabus has changed from 2008. Fine. So 2008 onwards, suppose I start teaching Plato. To make this discussion productive, you should write previous year questions on the topic so that you understand what is the requirement of the topic. The best guide is previous year questions. You should write all questions related to Plato, whatever is being discussed, analyze whether on the basis of discussion you are able to handle or answer those questions or not. Is that clear? And the next thing is about political science, and that is, I will say, not a challenge but a good thing. The good thing is it is very dynamic subject. Fine. Now the entire exam of UPSC is dynamic. You yourself must be understanding what is the weightage of the contemporary things, contemporary developments, policies, etc. in all general studies paper. Anybody who is not dynamic, who is not aware of the current developments, do you think he will be able to clear? No. Suppose any subject is not dynamic, static. I don't know about the other subjects. But will you clear UPSC without knowing current international, national, social, economic issues? So what is the advantage here? Here it is a part of our subject. Fine. So there is a very good overlap between general studies and political science. Fine. So paper 1, section B, general studies. Paper 2, both section A and B. So much of general studies you can cover. Lot of things, I will say the other way round. What you study in general studies will be a good base for the subject. Fine. Learn the integration of knowledge. How to integrate things. Fine. So from my side, political science and civil services preparations cannot be done through the books only. Fine. The Bible of any student is newspaper. Either of the two, you can go for either Hindu or Indian Express. One paper is necessary. Fine. To keep you updated, because your questions there will be an integration of the static and the dynamic part in the syllabus. Fine. Besides this, it is always advisable that you watch Rajya Sabha TV debates. Fine. experts on a single topic come and you will get to know different perspectives. That is most important thing. Then All India Radio, these news analysis, these are really helpful to understand. Much of the static books of thought, theory, they are not very much needed here. You have to write answers in a very limited words. Limited words, you can write answer when you have a conceptual clarity. Fine, otherwise you will not be able to do so. Then make some practical, realistic targets at different stages of your preparation. Fine, at this stage, this is not the time that you start writing answer. This is the time when you keep yourself relaxed, keep yourself free and understand the things. Writing answer once you understand the entire subject, because even some knowledge of general studies is also needed to get a holistic picture of the things. Fine. So maybe the right time is not now, it can be in October. And in mains, ultimately answer writing plays a very important role. So one of our student, Trupti, I think she got 16th or 17th rank or 13th, I don't remember the rank, 16th rank. So she told me, like, from the day she gave prelims exam till the mains exam, she was writing one paper every day, 20 questions every day. That is the time when you will have to make intensive efforts at writing, not now. And what extra I asked, what else did you do as you got such a good score? The only thing is that for every topic I added some extra points. Now what were the source of extra points? Primarily newspapers. Fine. So that time you can think that if not one paper, at least 10 questions per day I will be doing, but don't waste your time. मतलब तुम्हारा जैसे insight 10 question daily, don't do it all these things. This will actually very negatively impact your confidence, because every day so many things are coming and you are not able to cover. But step by step, nothing comes out of syllabus, whether in GS or in optional. So preparation can be done in a more relaxed manner. And my personal belief is this exam is not a knowledge exam. This is a personality exam. You have to, because you can never say I am fully prepared. What a civil servant in a country like India is supposed to do, in the minimum resources, he has to make the maximum performance. Fine. So even with minimum information, but relevant information, you can maximize your marks and think more. Rather than read more, think more. More time you will give to yourself in analyzing things. Things will become easy, things will fall to you. Is that clear? So understand, you are not here to do PhD. It is just that you need to have a basic idea what are the basic concepts and prepare. Understanding the examination and its requirement, that should be there while you are preparing. Fine. So when you are joining IAS or any of the civil services, All India services, you are actually, are you aware of Machiavelli? Okay. His famous book, The Prince. Fine. And Machiavelli says there are two qualities of a prince. Two essential qualities should be there in any person who wants to be prince. First thing is, he should be clever, like fox. You have to keep on evaluating yourself every day. How much quality of fox is coming to you. Fine? Be clever like fox. You don't need to be wise like Socrates. If you are a wise like a Socrates, you become philosopher. You may become teacher. But if you are a clever like fox, you will become the prince. So you are here sitting for what? The modern prince. You want to become a prince? What is an IAS officer? The modern prince? Fine. And this is something eternal quality you have to have. You should have cleverness. What I need to study, what I need to ignore. What is relevant for me, what is not. Develop on these traits. Clever. Less studies but ability to do the networking of ideas. Fine. And what he says, a prince should be brave like lion. Fine. So quality of prince is courage. Take the calculated risk. You cannot study everything. You must take some risk. Fine. This will pay you more. Your ability to take the calculated risk. See, all papers of UPSC designed keeping these two things in mind. Prelims paper, students study whole year. In the last they lack courage, they don't go for giving exam. They feel I am not prepared. So what they lack? Both. Neither they are clever nor they are courageous. CSAT exam, negative marking, what is the objective? To see how much calculated and risk you can take and how much there are questions which can be done by intelligent guess also. Fine. So papers are also designed keeping these traits. This is what is asked in interview also. Interview is not your knowledge exam. Interview is, they are testing whether you are able to turn everything in the direction you want. Are you a prince? Are you a leader? Work on those qualities. Don't work on becoming a philosopher. Though I will start my lecture with the philosopher. Fine? So keep these things in mind. Daily room mein likh lo. I don't have to be wise like Socrates. I have to be clever like fox. There are people like who do test series, learn 10-20 questions, get toppers rank. There are students who study thought from Ebenstein, Sabine and whatnot, but still they are unable because they cannot manage. Syllabus is so vast. So you have to have a very practical approach. Fine. So must do thing is like every day you eat, you have to read Hindu, nothing else. Fine. It is as important. Second thing is when you come to the class, you are not coming here just to take the notes. Here itself you have to understand, and it's not that you will take your own time and understand tomorrow or some other day. Fine. You will never be able to cover up. Fine. So, and another thing is, I am notorious in the sense that I give lot of notes, ma'am give lot of dictation. The thing is, I feel I know the best and I am confident about it. What is the right way of handling this exam? I may understand things with the discussion, but when before exam I have to revise, what I will be needing? The notes which are written in my own handwriting. Fine. So there are certain topics. It's not that every topic have to be discussed equally. Different topics have different nature. Fine. So the thing is, have the trust, follow what is being told to you. Sometimes I will give assignment, do that, there is a purpose. Fine. Sometimes I give, there are some topics which don't take much time. There are some topics which will take. You cannot have a same approach for everything. Fine. So follow what is being, be a good follower, finish your syllabus, understand the things and understand the purpose why you are here. Okay. So that's all for a general idea. And now before starting with the subject, before starting formally with the subject, I would first like to tell you about the syllabus. Fine. And what is the flow of the syllabus and how you should be approaching the syllabus. Fine. So you have this paper. Fine. See, there are two papers. I will first discuss paper 1. Fine. Now, paper 1 deals with thought and theory. Actually, political science is this much only. Fine. Rest is nothing different from general studies. So, to have the confidence, you should have very good base in the thought and theory. So, obviously, this is the portion that will take the maximum time. Now, what is the beauty of this portion? If you understand this, you don't need to revise. Fine, because this is very understanding based. But what it requires your complete attention and your active learning stage. You should be an active learner. In a way, only this much is political science, nothing is political science. Rest the syllabus is just because you have to bring it at par with other subjects. Fine. So now, thought and theory. What should be the flow of studying thought and theory? Fine. So ideally, a student should start, we will start with the Western political thought. So no need to write, it is there in the syllabus. You can just have a look on that. Western political thought. It's topic 10. Fine. Every thinker is important. You cannot ignore any thinker here. Each thinker has to be studied, and there you cannot go selectively here. And the Western thought make the base for all other topics. Fine. Now, though every thinker is important, but the most important thinker here is Karl Marx. Fine. With Karl Marx actually begins the real political analysis. Fine. So, Marx has shown a very different way of looking at the things. So, when you will study Marx, there is also another thinker, Hegel. Fine. And Marx has criticized Hegel. Hegel is supposed to be, or he was known as, the official philosopher, one of the most recognized philosopher of his time. And Hegel has said, Hegel has given the theories of the state, and Hegel has said that a state is like God on the earth. Fine. And Marx has contradicted Hegel. And Marx has said, don't write this, just Marx said that Hegel is standing on his head. Okay? He has to stand on his feet. Okay? Now why I am telling you this? Because most of the time, the way we look at the things, our position is like Hegel. Fine? We look at the things, we understand things as if we are standing on their head. But if we stand on the feet, we will come to know the reality. That the reality is very different, but that requires that our feet should be on the ground. Fine? So with Marx begins the real political analysis. He appealed that the way philosophers have explained the reality up till now, people should stop listening to them. People should start looking at the other way around. Is this clear? And Marx is the philosopher. No other philosopher has such an impact in the field of politics like Marx. Fine? There is not a single person on this globe who is not directly or indirectly impacted by Marx ideas. From the end of Second World War till the collapse of USSR, we see the world was divided between two blocks. Fine? So it is the Marx ideas, the world was divided, there was a Cold War, and Cold War led to the invention of nuclear weapons. Fine? So we cannot even imagine the impact of the thinker like Marx. And Marx made one statement about the thinkers which also is most suitable for himself. What Marx said, he said that philosophers have interpreted the world, but what matters is how to change it. Fine? So up till now, the philosophers have come, they have given an explanation, but who is a real philosopher? Who can change the world? Fine? So that is why political science has a very special, there is a very special position for Karl Marx in political analysis. And we must have a very good control, understanding of each and every term, each and every concept which Marx uses. Because after Marx, political theory becomes the analysis of many things from Marxist point of view. Have you understood this? So now for Western political thought, I will suggest that you stick to the class discussions and class notes. That will be more than sufficient. There is no need for books. Otherwise, I feel that all of you must be knowing what are important books. Fine. There are books like book by Brian Nelson. There is a book by Subrat Mukherjee. And just don't go and purchase the books. Only when you feel there is real need, do that. And in case you purchase the book, you should also know the technique of studying things. Whether you have to study word by word or you have to use it as a reference. I will suggest, in case you want, use it as a reference. But the more time you want to, rather than putting time on the static matters, you put time on the contemporary issues. Fine? So this is how the Western political thought, our first topic, every thinker but Marx. After studying Marx, you will start understanding political theory. Fine? Means you start making sense of politics. After this, the next logical topic is topic 8, political ideologies. Now this topic is more for understanding. Very less questions are asked, but it forms the base. On thought, ideology will be there, and ideology will make the base for all other concepts. So this topic is primarily for understanding. Fine. It is not so important for exam, not many questions will come, but without this you cannot move further. And this topic will also demand conceptual clarity. Fine. And it is very easy, like in India, why we call this party leftist, this party rightist, this party fascist, this party centrist. When you will study ideology, it will become very clear to you. Fine. Now in ideologies, from exam point of view, what is to be prepared very thoroughly, that is feminism. Fine. So all like responsibility of women empowerment UPSC has taken. Fine. So every paper there will be some question on women. Fine. So they feel that this is the way they are contributing for women empowerment. So no UPSC paper will be without a question on women. Fine. So, and next topic which has become relevant from exam point of view is fascism. Fascism. Fine. They can ask you the rise of right, the rise of authoritarian leaders, the rise of neo-fascist trends. Fine. So around the world we see the rise of authoritarian leaders. There is a decline of democracy everywhere. Fine. Including in the countries like USA. You see USA, you see Russia, you see Turkey, you see China. Fine. So Xi Jinping, now he is a president for to nahi, lifetime. Huh? Fine. So everywhere. And now Modi ji has become Modi Z. Fine. So almost we are going in the same direction, and it will be very difficult for anybody now to replace. Fine. And it will also be, I think, something like a lifetime. Fine. So rise of right, rise of authoritarianism, rise of neo-fascism everywhere. So that is why this is expected that you should be very clear about this particular topic. Fine. So now I have started calling him Modi Ji rather than G. Fine. So now after ideology, on ideology is based our topic number 2, theories of state. Fine. Again repetition. Political science is nothing but liberalism, Marxism, socialism, feminism, Gandhism, debates. Fine. So theories of state, liberal, neoliberal, Marxist, this is all repetition, pluralist. From exam point of view, the most important will be post-colonial, theory of post-colonial state. So what is India? Is India a post-colonial state? Yes. So why is this topic in our syllabus? Because we have to understand how post-colonial states are being governed. What is their philosophy? Fine. what is a difference between the states in post-colonial societies and the Western societies. Fine. So, what is the purpose of a state? Governance. Fine. Which part of the world is better governed, east or west? West. Fine. So, where states are better, stronger? West. Fine. And what is the term used for Indian state? Soft state. India is known as, in political science terminology, a word given by Gunnar Myrdal as soft state. What do you mean by soft state? Soft state is actually the state which is soft on criminals. Fine. What is the purpose of a state? To establish law and order. Purpose of a state is to prevent the crime, to punish the criminals, to protect the life, liberty, security of the people. But states in third world countries, we are fortunate that we are in India and India is a soft state. But otherwise, most of the states in most of the third world countries are actually failed states. Fine. So, we are not a completely failed state. Fine. But countries like Afghanistan, countries in, let's say, Syria and all, there is no state. It's a state, the absence of a state is anarchy. They are in the state of what? Lawlessness, anarchy, and India is technically called as functional anarchy. Anarchy is there, but things are happening. Fine. Soft state or functional anarchy. So, what are the unique features of the states here? Fine. See, India is democracy. China is a communist country, non-democratic country. Yet, in both the countries, we see the way a state deals with anti or secessionist trends, it is similar. There is excessive use of force. Neither state in China nor state in India will ever dare to go for, let's say, referendum or plebiscite when it deals with separatist tendencies. Whereas the states in Britain, state in Europe, they adopt the method of referendum. Fine. The thing is, the state is strong there. The states are weak there. If we will give this opportunity, the states will collapse. So you have to understand in this topic the unique features and the unique problems with the state in developing countries face. Fine. And when you write the answers in theory, it is always advisable and desirable that you write answers from the current developments. You can give example from Afghanistan, you can give example from Venezuela, you can give example from Arab Spring, Algeria, and so many things. Fine. So number of times students come and they ask, what should we study in the newspaper? Is the news of the domestic politics of any country is relevant or not? Now it has become relevant. Why? Because we are living in global world. Global world means the world has become closer. Fine. And the differentiation between the domestic politics and international has gone. And even in UPSC questions, international relations, they can emphasize more on domestic politics. They can ask, discuss the current developments in the domestic politics of Afghanistan and how it impacts India-Afghan relations. So it's not that we should not be studying about the domestic developments in different countries. Fine? So now after the theories of state, the next topic that we will do is topic 7. Concept of power, hegemony and ideology and legitimacy. Concept of power. So power, hegemony, ideology, legitimacy, they are different types of powers. Fine? Politics is about power. Political science is about the study of power. And hence there cannot be a question paper without a question on power. They'll ask question either on power or hegemony. There is lot of overlapping between this topic and the thought. Like hegemony, we have already studied hegemony in Gramsci. Fine? So many things in the syllabus are repetitive. Fine? Now in the theories of power, one of the most important scholar where you should also be putting a lot of focus is Foucault. Foucault's theory of power. Foucault, French scholar Foucault, Foucault's theory of power. So you can expect a question from Foucault's theory of power or postmodernist conception of power. How do you get power? You want power? Power is a good thing, bad thing? Good thing. Not bad, why bad? Power makes our life easy. Fine, and you can get many things if you have power. So why should we call good part is more? Okay. So everybody wants to be in power. Now in the present democratic politics, how do you come to power? You come to power with the consent. Maza nahi aaya is answer mein. How Modi ji has come to power?
With the support of the masses.
Support of the masses. How? Why masses supported him?
Because he matches the mentality of the people.
He does charisma. Huh? He has won the trust. What he did to win the trust? He fulfilled his promises. His Bharat is Swachh. Okay. Huh? He is a good orator. Yes. In politics, people are not concerned what you do. तुम राजा थोड़ी कुछ करता है, फिर राजा खाएगा, पियोन थोड़ी है वो. Is that clear? राजा कुछ नहीं करता, सिर्फ बात करता है. ठीक है? जैसे हिटलर, what was his strength? Oratory. ठीक है? So power, you get power when you are successful in establishing a discourse. Now after election you must have repeatedly read this word, discourse or narrative. Fine? So what went in favor of BJP? BJP was successful in establishing this narrative that they are nationalist and country is safe in their hands. Fine? Now what is the biggest weakness of the opposition? Opposition had no narrative. Okay? Their only narrative was throw Modi out of power. Fine? They had no other narrative. Fine? So to come to power, you have to build discourses. Discourse, you have to build a story. Fine. So Foucault has given the concept of connection between knowledge and power. How do you come to power? Through knowledge. What exactly is a knowledge? Knowledge is your ability to build a discourse, your ability to build a narrative. Are you understanding this? Now this concept, the concept of discourse, the concept of narrative, this is given by Foucault. Now we frequently use these words. Narrative of Indian politics is changing. Fine, discourse is changing. We look things through the narratives. This dimension of power is being discussed by Foucault, and that is why understanding of Foucault's idea is too very much expected for anybody in political science. Have you understood this? Now, on the concept of power, you will see that there will be lot of repetition in theory of democracy. Fine. So the next topic is theory of democracy. So lot of questions are expected. Today everybody feels as if for everything the solution is democracy. Fine. For good governance you need grassroots democracy. To address the rural poverty you need democracy. Okay, so what is democracy? Democracy is something, a very fashionable idea of our times. There was a time when nationalism had gone out of fashion. Globalization was in fashion. But again, nationalism has made a comeback. Democracy. Any solution, if you don't know in GS, kuch bhi, you can always write grassroots democracy. Solution to every problem, two suggestions you can always give. One is women empowerment, second is democracy. Fine. So again, UPSC will definitely ask question on democracy. Fine. You have to specially focus on deliberative democracy. Deliberative. Deliberative means debates, discussions. So what is happening? What is parliament? Parliament is basically the platform for deliberation. Law making is not the first function of parliament, deliberation. But globally, there is a decline in a deliberative democracy. In India, you see, we frequently hear the concept of ordinance Raj. The governments bypassing the legislatures, the destructive oppositions not allowing parliaments to function, resulting into the democracy turning towards ordinance or executive gaining lot of power. Fine. So the importance of deliberation, why there has to be discussions, why there has to be debate, why many problems can be resolved only when we go for making our democracy deliberative. Unfortunately, the media has made our democracy noisy, okay, but not deliberative. What happens in parliament? No one is able, like there is so much disruption, so much disorder in parliament that the debate cannot take place. So there is a lot of noise and deliberation, there is a difference. So this topic is of very much a contemporary relevance. Fine. Now after democracy, the next topic we will do is rights. Now what is most important in the theory of rights is human rights. Human rights. I hope all of you understand what is human rights. You all are humans. Okay. And you think you have certain rights, so human and right become human right. Fine. So who is that great person to whom we can attribute the concept of human rights? Who is that great person? Human rights was in discourse before Second World War. Human rights is a post Second World War concept. Okay? In 1948 came Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Fine? Now who is that great man because of which this UDHR came? Had Hitler not committed atrocities on Jews, maybe this concept of UDHR would not have come into existence. Fine. So, who were Jews in Germany? Minorities. Minorities. Either you can call it as minorities or you can call as non-dominant section. What is the definition of minority? Non-dominant section. Fine. So the non-dominant, besides religious or linguistic minorities, so there can be some other non-dominant sections. Indigenous communities, women can be there, tribals can be there, homosexuals. These are what? Non-dominant sections. So when we study human rights, we are studying the rights of minorities. Fine? The rights of women. The two prominent issues in the theory of human rights is rights of minorities and rights of women. Though now we are also talking about LGBT rights and rights of physically disabled and these type of things, but theoretically the major debates are between these two things, women and minorities. Fine? So, protection of minorities. What is a term for that? Concerns of minorities. Does Indian Constitution give special rights to minorities? Fine. So, can you give me a term for that? What term? Secularism? Article, which article? Article 2930? Do they deal with Indian secularism? Is it a facet of Indian secularism? Special rights to minorities. Article 29 and 30. Will it be an example or manifestation of Indian secularism? No, you are not sure? Which articles you will refer when you will refer secularism in India? Article 14, Article 25 to 28, but that is common in all countries. In GS paper 1, they ask the question, what is the difference in the Indian model of secularism and the Western model of secularism? What is unique? The special rights to minorities. This is the very unique feature of Indian model of secularism. Now this has generated a big debate in the country. Secular versus pseudo-secular. Who uses this word? Pseudo-secular word is associated with whom? Rightist. Who is the person who popularized it? Advani. Fine. Pseudo-secularism. Fine. So they believe that our model is not like Western model. So basically Indian model of secularism is known as multiculturalism. multiculturalism. You have heard this word? Okay. So, in the theories of human rights, from exams point of view, this is the theory that will be asked. Multiculturalism. There are scholars like Will Kimlicka, Bhiku Parekh. So multiculturalism is a school of thought that talks about the protection of rights of minorities. This debate is going on in the West. Fine, multiculturalism. So you can link the Trump's policies, you can link with the changes which are happening in France, like banning wearing burqa in public and the protest against this. So these are the examples from the real current situation you will have to bring when you are explaining the theory of human rights and multiculturalism. And hence this topic becomes very relevant for exam. Is this clear? Multiculturalism. So in human rights topic, you have to pay special attention to multiculturalism. So you understand multiculturalism is a nice word, fine, with the focus on protection of minorities, fine. Now after doing the theory of rights, we will do the theory of justice. Now, justice. Justice is again the core concept in political philosophy. You can use the two terms interchangeably, ethics and political philosophy, especially ethics in governance and political philosophy. And in political philosophy, in the theory of justice, the most important thinker is John Rawls. Found? So even for our exam, Rawls' theory of justice. Now Rawls has written many books, 3 prominent books on the idea of justice. Since the questions are being exhausted from the first book, the focus of exam will be from his second book on theory of justice. Fine. And now his earlier theory, which was written in his first book, is being treated as a theory of ethics, not a theory of politics. So for us, his second book, where he has given political conception of justice, is relevant. Fine. So Rawls' theory of justice is, again, there will always be a question either on Rawls or his critics. No paper will be there without Rawls' theory of Rawls, some question on Rawls. There are a lot of videos also available on Rawls' theory of justice, Michael Sandel's commentaries and all, you can always watch. Now, do you understand what is justice? Have you ever experienced injustice? Have you ever experienced injustice? Can you define justice? What is justice? How do you differentiate justice and injustice? What feeling? Have you faced injustice? You are more concerned with justice or injustice? Injustice. Justice happen or not happen is not important. Injustice should not happen. Fine. We should minimize injustice because you cannot maximize justice. Fine. So when do you feel that you have not been treated with justice? Exploitation. Huh? Discrimination. Equality. The idea of justice is closely linked to the idea of equality. Fine. So basically fairness. The idea of justice is fairness. So justice does not mean one is a good student, other is not so good, and the teacher gives equal marks. That is not justice. That is not being fair. So justice basically means fairness, equality. Do you think it is a equality when a teacher gives equal marks for a good answer and a bad answer? No, because that equality is not fair. Fine. So equality is in science 2 equals to 2 is equality. But in political science 4 equals to 2 may be equality. Fine. So the concepts are not so straight here. You have to understand the idea of equality, and the justice and equality is actually the same topic, and in the theory of justice again the nature of, like, there will be focus on the question on Rawls' idea of, even in the theory of equality you can write Rawls' theory of equality. Topic 4. Now Rawls, and then there are many people who have written commentaries on Rawls. Fine. So one very familiar name is Amartya Sen. Fine. So there can be Amartya Sen's, they can link Rawls and Amartya Sen also. So we'll also see Amartya Sen's ideas on equality. So after doing all these things, then we should approach to first topic, political theory, meaning and approaches. This topic is a topic of methodology. How do we study political science? Fine. And it is customary to ask a compulsory question from methodological topics. Fine. So be prepared for compulsory questions. Normally the questions will come from behavioralism and post-behavioralism. Have you ever heard these terms? So best thing is go through the previous year question papers and at least come to know what are different terms and theories. Fine. So this is how we finish the political theory. This is obviously the core of the subject, takes the maximum time in understanding. Rest of the subject is based on this particular subject. For political theory, again you stick to the class discussion. If you want, you can just refer the book by O.P. Gauba. That is more than enough. Fine. So now the next topic I will do Indian section later on, because I think in this batch is anybody is expecting to write mains? No one? Then it's good. Okay, fine. So because international relations part is supposed to be comparatively difficult, so the second area I'll take is international relations, paper 2. Paper 2, let us not categorize into 1 and 2, A and B. Let us deal it holistically. So there is comparative politics. Then there are topics on theory of international relations. Another section is world politics. Which has a overlap with common topics, India and the world. Fine. Now, one thing I want to make clear, that students often get confused between comparative politics and international politics. Just because they are clubbed together in the syllabus, they are not the same thing. Fine. International means what? Politics among nations. When I study India-Pakistan relations, what is it? International. Comparative politics. Suppose I have to compare the constitution of Britain with the constitution of USA. That is comparative politics. Fine. So now it's not that we only compare the constitutions. We study the whole domestic politics. So in comparative politics, we study the domestic politics of the countries. Fine. In international relations between the two countries. Is this clear? So don't get confused. What happens is, there is same theory. There is a theory, systems approach in comparative politics, systems approach in international relations. Students take it granted that they can use sometimes comparative politics term and international, but they are not same. The scholars are different. Fine. Now, there is a myth that comparative politics is very difficult. Fine. So, don't believe in this. These myths are spread by those students who don't clear exam and who do not have the required level of smartness to understand. Comparative politics is a repetition of political theory. Fine. So we need not to do something separately. Same question, the question from the theory section can be asked here. So those who have done graduation and PG will understand comparative politics need not to be done separately. In graduations, there is more elaborate comparative politics we have to do, the constitutions and on, but in UPSC only 4 topics are given, which are very basic topics. Fine. For comparative politics, I'll suggest stick to the notes, because there is no such book available in the market which is according to the UPSC. There are books according to the universities, VN Khanna, JC Jory and all. But we don't need that book. There will be one long question, one short question. Don't waste your time for that. On the basis of knowledge of political theory, you can handle this paper. Is that clear? So now in first 4 topics are from comparative politics. So again, first topic is methodology topic. It is always compulsory. There will always be a question on any of the approach. Compulsory topic. Now, state in comparative politics. Feature of state in developing, socialist, capitalist. This is the same thing which is there. See the topic 2 of paper 1. Theories of state. It is same thing, only they have changed the language. Fine. So, no need to unnecessarily and artificially segregate these topics. The only thing is, in theory we will study the theoretical concepts. Here also we have to study the same theoretical concept. But they can frame a question which may be related to current developments happening in the country which is in the news. what is happening in Venezuela, what protests are going on in Algeria, maybe. But rarely this is a possibility. But anyway, even in theory, I will suggest when you write answer, you write with the contemporary examples. So it will not make any difference, no extra book, no extra preparation is needed. Fine? Now, next topic, politics of representation and participation, political parties, pressure groups, social movements. We will do the theory part, which is static. But again, you should be keeping track of developments happening in the electoral politics around the globe. What happened in European Union elections? What is happening in this country's election? The normal trend maybe at present is the rise of right. So these very common sense based examples, very generic analysis that you get from newspapers can be helpful in handling the questions of current nature. Is that clear? Now, globalization, open-ended topic, it has been mentioned at 3, 4 places everywhere, impact of globalization. So this is an open-ended topic, we will do it comprehensively. To keep track of globalization, what is the status of globalization? You should always look at two things. G20 summits, fine, and their declarations or communique, they will tell where the globalization is moving. And important speeches at World Economic Forum. These are the places for debates on the trends in globalization. Fine? So speeches of some important ministers, a president like Chinese President Xi Jinping's speech 2-3 years back. It was very important in talking about like where the globalization is moving, what challenges globalization is creating. If you have time, you can watch or read his speech. That was a very good speech on globalization. Fine. So these are open-ended topics. I will give you the theory, I will give you the important works. But to update and add value to your answers, see if something is there in G20 summit communiques and World Economic Forum meetings. Fine. Now, next portion is international relations and its theories. So, international relations is actually the youngest discipline. The systematic study of international relations is started after First World War. Fine. After First World War, what has happened? After First World War, USA has started playing an active role in international politics. And since then, international politics as a discipline had emerged. Fine. And if political theory, political philosophy had developed in Europe, international relations has developed in USA. And American scholars very proudly say that international relations is American social science. Fine. It is a science which has been developed by Americans. All theories of international relations, they are modeled on the priorities of American foreign policy. So when you study international relations, it appears as if we are studying America's foreign policy. And that is the fundamental subject of international relations. So keep track of all important actions by USA. You cannot say that US, North Korea talks are not relevant to us. They are relevant to us. Fine. Anything USA does is relevant to us. Fine. So we are living in the world which has been built by USA. Who has built the present world order? United Nations, World Bank, IMF, WTO, everything. Who has built all these things? USA. So USA has built the world order. Fine. Who has made the rules? USA. What China is doing? China is disturbing these rules. China is not following these rules. So what US has to do? US has to punish. Fine. So US is the hegemon. US hegemony will be the main topic in world politics. Fine. It is given separately. But you, more than Indian politics, don't study India's foreign policy. There's nothing into that. Fine. India's foreign policy is just derivative of US. There is no brainchild of India in India's foreign policy. Fine. So whatever we do is much dictated by USA right now. Fine. So what Iranian says that India talks of friendship with Iran, but India's Qibla, place of worship or a direction, is Washington. Fine. This is the normal comment by the Iranian diplomats, that your policies are not framed in New Delhi, South Bloc. They are now coming directly from Washington. Fine. So India-US relations. But USA is still the single superpower and we are living in the world made by USA. Fine. So you have to keep track. If USA is not getting benefited by the system it has created, no point USA taking the burden of maintaining that system. USA will go for what is Trump's policy, take it or leave it. Fine. So if either WTO should be changed in the way that benefits USA, otherwise what's the point? US remains in WTO. Fine. And once the US goes, American scholars, they call USA as an indispensable nation. Fine. No other country has those features, those strength, those resources, those type of a power like USA is. And it is a belief that once USA goes, there will be no order in the world, because no other country can manage the world order in the way USA can. That is why it is known as indispensable nation. This is what Trump is trying to tell to everybody. I am going out, you manage your things, so that you realize the importance of what USA had did. Is this clear? So, though not explicitly mentioned, but keep track of US foreign policy. And sometimes they do ask US foreign policy, Russian foreign policy, Chinese foreign policy. Fine. So, and inter-India and the world, international relations, this is all to be understood in the backdrop of the current world order. So what is happening in the current world order? We are living in the stage of transition. What transition is happening? The power transition. US is a hegemon. China is challenging the hegemony of USA. And hence every question that will come, it will be in the backdrop of US-China relations. Like last year they asked question, explain the developments in India-Japan strategic partnership in the context of rising China. Fine. So you have to pay attention to two countries very minutely. You have to observe what is going on between, like they ask trade war question even in GS, in pol science, everywhere. Fine. So keep track of US and China relations. The best thing is through the newspaper only. There is also one site, Diplomat, you must be aware of. They also write articles on the current issues. For a student, that is enough till we reach there and you understand conceptually. And once you understand the international relations conceptually, you will be in a position to do your own analysis, what is happening and why. Because you have to understand the fundamentals. Fine. And fundamentals of international relations, they are based on geography. So instead of understanding politics in a free time, if you look at the map and you learn to understand the map, Persian Gulf, what is the topography of Iran, why US is so particular to have a government which is controlled by US in Iran, why it is raising the stakes very high. Everything can be explained with the help of geography. Fine. So best thing to understand international relations is develop a good understanding of world map, important sea lines of communication, choke points, places of resources, important areas like Caspian Sea, what are the countries in and around there. Fine. So, and right now international politics is concentrated in two regions. First is Indian Ocean. Modi's first visit to Maldives, Indian Ocean. Second is Eurasia. Fine. Eurasia, Central Asia. The two Chinese projects, OBOR, Maritime Silk Route and Silk Road. Fine. This is the arc of international politics. Everything is happening around this arc. Now the center of gravity is not in Atlantic. European Union also last year brought a strategy paper focusing on India. India in international relations is projected as a swing state. Means whichever side India comes, it will be beneficial. Fine. So China, and sometimes you have summits with China, sometimes with USA. And there was a time after the end of Cold War when economy was dominating the relationship, but now strategic issues. So we may have tensions between India and USA on trade front, but we are moving very fast on a strategic front. India is almost becoming a quasi-ally of USA. Last year essay came, relevance of non-alignment. That was the first occasion Prime Minister didn't visit and attended the summit of NAM. Fine. So India not remaining non-aligned, rather India is going for very close quasi-alliance with USA. So you have to understand India's foreign policy, no questions on bilateral relations are asked. In the context of US-China relations, there will be questions on India, Iran, India, Maldives, India, neighbor and everything. You are understanding how to look at international relations? Fine. So this is the field, don't look at syllabus much, but understand the fundamental requirements. Is this clear? So now international relations, because topics are very much overlapping. Fine. We cannot, every topic is actually important. Now topic 7, rise of superpowers, strategic and ideological bipolarity, arms race, Cold War, nuclear threat. So Cold War is in your general studies, but in GS you emphasize more on the historical aspect of it. Fine. Historical aspect is expected here also, but the question will be of contemporary nature. They can ask you, can we give Cold War as a term for the current state of US-China relations? Fine. So expect contemporary questions rather than static questions. Fine. Non-aligned movement they have given at 3 places. So it can always be our collapse of USSR, you do in your world history also, unipolarity and American hegemony. American hegemony is the most important topic. US foreign policy. Fine. Everywhere, whether it is Syria, whether it is China, whether it is Afghanistan, everywhere what is happening, US is making attempts to establish its hegemony. Now, which countries are challenging the hegemony of USA right now? US is in confrontation. So primarily China, China's proxy, North Korea, Russia, Iran, and now even Turkey. Fine. So all these countries, along with that, there was a buzzword about BRICS. So, but right now you cannot say that in any way India is challenging US hegemony, but rather we have become the strategic partners. After the end of Second World War, when we started non-alignment, that was India's challenge to US hegemony. Fine. So US relations, and even obviously even Venezuela, but that is again Russia. Fine. So US hegemony will be a very, very important topic for us. Fine. Relevance of non-alignment, this is all repetition. Then evolution of international economic system. So just topic 8, and in India and world you see topic 4. It is interrelated. We can do it together. Relations with Africa, Latin America, leadership role in demand for NEO and WTO. Fine. So section A and section B can be done together, because even in section A we have to understand from India's perspective. Fine. So normally WTO. What type of questions? Future of WTO. What is the status of, don't write, we will do it, you just listen, so that in newspapers you keep track. What is the status of agricultural negotiations? What is India's position on the food subsidies? What is US position on India's food security program? Fine. So future of WTO, so WTO meetings, future, the special ministerial called in New Delhi, what was the decision, what was the reason. Fine. So these things, the best thing is listen to news analysis of All India Radio and India's Word and other programs in Rajya Sabha TV. Fine. United Nations topic 9 here, and again topic 6, India and UN system. That can be done together. Similarly, so in India UN system, India's main concern, reform of UN Security Council. Fine. And India's major role in UN peacekeeping. These are the 2 important questions which are asked often. And sometimes ICJ, role of International Court of Justice. So here you can do selective studies. Now regionalization of world politics, EU, ASEAN, APEC, SAARC, NAFTA, and all topics here, India and South Asia. section B you see India and global centers of power. This all can be done together. Fine. Then contemporary global concerns, democracy, human rights, environment. Environment will always be important. So in environment, climate change, negotiations. जेंडर जस्टिस तो कर ही लेना होता है हमेशा, ठीक है. यूपीएससी पेपर है तो जेंडर जस्टिस, terrorism, nuclear proliferation here, and then section B also, topic 7, India and nuclear question. They are all overlapping. Okay. So very interesting this part. I think there is nothing to leave. Nuclear issues. So again in section B, the first topic is like a compulsory topic, determinants of foreign policy, institutions of policy making, continuity and change. So there will always be a question how foreign policy is made, what is the role of PMO, what is the role of Ministry of External Affairs, what are the weaknesses, how can we improve, what is the role of media, what is the role of think tanks, lateral entry, these type of things are asked. Fine. So I hope you have understood this part of the syllabus. Any question? For this I'll say the main source is any paper, Hindu or Express, and ORF, Observer Research Foundation. Almost every topic they have some or the other good article. Observer Research Foundation. Don't go for many sources, stick to maximum this or Diplomat. So now they also conduct the annual dialogue, Raisina dialogue. So if you have an opportunity, go and attend Raisina dialogue. You will understand the current trends and India's position. Fine. So now Indian, yes, but for international relations I do recommend a book. If you have time, do read Global Politics by Andrew Haywood, and latest publication. Global Politics by Andrew Haywood. Whenever you start studying, purchase the recent, because he covers almost the very, very recent developments, very good analysis, very beautifully written topics like terrorism, gender justice and all. So besides notes, this book reading will definitely help you. Fine. So now we come to the Indian section. Indian section, I start with Indian political thought. Again, stick to the notes. If you are very keen, there are many books like V.R. Mehta's book and all, but they are meant for philosophy students. Fine. If you want to supplement, you can refer IGNOU notes. That serves our purpose. Fine. Now, Indian thought, earlier they used to have less emphasis on Indian thought, but now because a nationalist government in power, okay, so you can expect more national thinkers. Fine. So almost every thinker, but repeatedly they are asking on Aurobindo and Ambedkar or Gandhi Ambedkar debate. This can be asked in your GS paper 1 also, GS paper 4 also. Fine. Now, Indian nationalism, there is nothing special we have to do. Whatever you do in your general studies is fine. From political science point of view, 1B is important. Perspectives on national movement. Now in perspective, very important is two perspectives. One, they ask repeatedly on Marxist and second Dalit. So Ambedkar's view we will anyway see. It's same. It's a repetition of it. Now, making of Indian Constitution, this is all general studies type like Constituent Assembly, etc. Salient features of Indian Constitution, preamble, fundamental rights. So always basic structure doctrine they ask. Fundamental rights, if any recent judgment, recent amendment, then they will ask, like when right to privacy was introduced, they have asked. Fine. So anything that is recent. Union government, what is important is Supreme Court. Okay, now a lot of questions on Supreme Court. The traditional questions used to be judicial activism, but now the questions will be on the institutional crisis within the Supreme Court. Controversies related to the internal functioning. Controversies related to the post of CJI. Fine. State governments, we need not to do anything other than governor. Nobody is going to ask chief minister and high courts. Fine. Grassroots democracy, yes, Panchayati Raj and municipal governance, because the government's focus is so much on municipal urban. So now urban, otherwise the traditional trend was to ask questions from Panchayati Raj. Fine. Commissions, all commissions you can do except UPSC. There's nothing very debatable about it. So election commission has created a lot of news, fine, in the recent elections, and many may think that we were standing on our heads, and it's high time to start looking at election commission by standing on our feet. And TN Session had made election commission that we were thinking that it was something flawless, but the way election commission have conducted itself in recent time has led to the very new question marks on the credibility and integrity of the institution. So always election commission will be important. All these commissions, one commission comes, you see the trend. If they will ask National Commission on Scheduled Caste, they will ask National Commission on Scheduled Tribe. Same pattern, answers also do not differ, similar weaknesses, similar challenges, similar way forward. Fine, can be handled easily. Now rest I need not to discuss because every topic is relevant only. Federalism, planning, caste, religion, caste, ethnicity. From here onwards, if you will do, you can easily cover your GS papers post-independence. Fine. Formation of new states, social movements is nothing but post-independence. If you see this year's GS paper 1, there is a question on role of caste, there is a question on secularism, there is a question on, I think, women movement. Fine. So this is how you can easily cover your post-independence. Fine. So now that was the syllabus. Do you have any questions? It was very boring, you found? Huh? No, not boring? Good. So our first topic will be Western political thought.